Thank you, choir. So this is the fun text in the Bible where Jesus calls Peter, did you catch that? 8:33, verse 8:33. Jesus calls Peter Satan. Not suck up, Satan. Yeah, how did things escalate to that point? Because up to then, Peter kind of was the A-level disciple. So this week I got curious. Is this the first time Jesus really gets angry, mad, kind of scornful, concerned? Is his blood pressure going up by Mark chapter 8? So I reread Mark, starting at chapter 1 through 8, just to kind of analyze this. And I threatened to do this at the Wednesday Bible study, and I did it, but I didn't quite say what I was dreaming of doing. At the Bible study, I want to go through the Bible now, after reading chapter 8, and get like a highlighter that's either red, orange, or yellow, and monitor Jesus's emotion. You know how there's red letter Bibles? I'm going to do an emotional analysis of Jesus, Yellow, he's getting a little frustrated. Orange, red, he is full like a volcano. So, let's acknowledge Jesus is not, sitting on a mountain meditating and calm all the time. He expresses the full range of human emotions. So, analyzing this a little bit. The first time I noticed in rereading Mark up to the point that we are at today was in chapter 3, and we studied this text, the Sabbath texts. Jesus feels angry and grieved in his heart over the religious authorities who do not understand that Sabbath is meant for healing. He is grieved at their lack of mercy for people. So that's chapter 3. Then it wasn't until chapter 7 that Jesus seems to get hot under the collar for another time. And in this time, he is talking to the religious authorities again. And he calls them hypocrites. They're hypocrites. Like they seem to know the letter, but not the spirit of God's word and God's ways. It's making him crazy. The third time that Jesus seems to get a little bit more hot under the collar in the Gospel of Mark actually is in Mark 8, the chapter for this week. And it's a part that we didn't read. It's toward, around verse 15 or 11, around there in the middle. Jesus gets upset. Jesus is he groans in his inner spirit. He groans. Have you ever done that, parents? Groaning in your inner spirit, or anybody these days. This groaning in his inner spirit is regarding, you guessed it, the religious types of his day. So 3 times where Jesus moves from healing and, hanging out, he is frustrated with the religious people, the religious leaders, the teachers of his day. That's where Jesus' blood starts to boil a little bit. So then today, right after that third instance where Jesus groans in his inner spirit after having an interaction with some religious types, Jesus turns to his disciples and something interesting happens. Jesus warns them. Jesus warns the disciples about the religious types. He's like, guys, come here. Beware of these religious leaders. Not everything is as it seems. And they're going to be in cahoots with the Herod people. So just trying to tell you, watch out, danger. To which the disciples say, "Hey, Jesus, thanks for the warning." No, they do not. They whisper among themselves, "He seems kind of hot under the collar today. Do you think it's because we don't have enough bread? We only have one loaf." Jesus overhears their words, and he's like, guys. And then there's a fourth incident of Jesus being upset with someone, and it's the first time he's upset with the disciples. Guys, I'm not talking about bread. Holy cow, think about it. We just fed 5,000 people, and how many leftover baskets were there? The disciples say, 12? That is correct. Then Jesus says, we just then fed 4,000 people, and there were a whole bunch of leftovers, and how many baskets were left over? 7? That's right. Do you not understand? There is always going to be enough bread. This is not about bread, people. Oh, Jesus is getting a little testy. And at this point, he seems to be upset that the disciples just aren't getting it. They're not perceiving the provision, the grace, the abundance of God. He's trying to warn them about something else, but they're stuck on something silly. What to do? I wonder if this is why Jesus decides to take a big, long trip with them up to Caesarea Philippi, which is quite a ways away from their usual digs around the Sea of Galilee. So that's your homework. Not now, but you can look it up. Caesarea Philippi, way up in the northwest. It's quite a ways to hoof it. So he scoops them up, and they take a trip, and they have some car time together to chat. And so Jesus starts the conversation. And he says, "So, who do people say that I am?" The disciples, they know what people think. They say people think that you're John the Baptist, the guy who got killed. They think you're Elijah, that Baal fighting prophet. Or they think you're one of the other prophets, concerned about justice and ethics and all that stuff. Okay. Then Jesus poses a much deeper question. But who do you, as my disciples, say that I am? Who do you say? And Peter answers, "You are the Messiah." I wonder if Jesus thought, thank goodness. They're getting it. Traction. There is a foothold here. So this is the first time that loaded word, Messiah, comes up, where the disciples disclose they get it, who Jesus is. Not some ordinary prophet, but a Messiah, the one that they had been waiting for centuries, Messiah. Then the text says that Jesus starts teaching them something new. It's almost as if Jesus assured that they got the baseline knowledge going. They're ready for the next level up, to comprehend what the plan is and what's going on. So Jesus begins to teach this thing. He says that the Son of Man, which is Jesus' way that he talks about himself, the Son of Man is going to undergo great suffering. The Son of Man is going to be rejected by all those religious types, the leaders, the teachers, the whole ball of wax. He's going to be rejected, and he's going to be killed. That's what's going to happen here. First time Jesus teaches this, he's warning them. He's sending a signal. And time will pass, and then he will rise. So that's the next level of teaching. So Jesus is trying to send a signal. He's trying to send a warning. He's saying, heads up, this is what's going to happen. They start wailing right there. Really, really hard wailing. Gnashing of teeth. Just on cue. Peter. Does Peter take in that new piece of teaching? Does he take it well? He says, nope. Full of himself, Peter says, Jesus, you're wrong. Now, Matthew's gospel has an explanation for why Peter corrects Jesus, but Mark does not. Mark is silent. Mark allows Peter to step into the void there and say, no, Jesus, you're wrong. To which Jesus says, we're back at the top now, get behind me, Satan. Jesus is really mad. That's pretty severe. He has not called anybody else Satan yet. Get behind me, Satan, Jesus says to his A student. Get behind me, Satan. For your mind is on human things and not divine. Interestingly, this is the criticism that Jesus makes in chapter 7 against the religious authorities there. He said, your mind, your talk, your religious blather is about human tradition and not God. To which we might say, well, what is the difference? What is human thought and what is divine thought? Well, fortunately, Jesus' teaching goes on today. From that point, Jesus summons the disciples, and then he even summons the crowd, who conveniently seem to be around at this point in the story. He summons them all together. And I feel like Jesus at this point gets out a megaphone. Listen, yous people. In case it is not clear to you, let me make this abundantly clear. Jesus says, if you are my followers, right, if you are my followers, it's not just like me and feel you're cool on the gram. No, if you like me, two things you got to do. One, deny yourself. Deny yourself. Well, what does that mean? For our purposes today, I'll just say get over yourself. It's not about your ego. Deny yourself. Step one. And then, you know what? You're ready for step two. Take up your cross. And then follow me. Deny yourself. Take up your cross. You got that, followers? Well, then it makes me think, what does he mean by take up the cross? Take up your cross. What's up with that? Well, then, what does it mean that Jesus takes up the cross? And by the way, this is the first instance of the word cross that appears in the Gospel of Mark, and it doesn't appear again until it's Jesus' cross. So here is that loaded word, cross, dropped into Mark chapter 8. Well, I think, start with what does it mean that Jesus takes up the cross? Well, I think we go back to what he's just said in that specialized teaching. For him to take up the cross is to suffer. It is to be rejected. And it is to be killed. Yikes. Ooh, do I really want to follow Jesus and take up my cross? That sounds terrible. Well, let's dig in a little bit more about why does Jesus take up a cross? Like, how does that happen? Why does he suffer? Why is he rejected? Why is he killed? And there, I think we get at that pattern that Jesus was trying to flag for the disciples a couple of different times. I wonder when Jesus came to the earth, if his plan was, let's heal, let's talk about God, let's experience some grace and love. I wonder if that was Jesus' plan A. But across time, he learned his true mission. Plan B. They're not getting it. Sadly, the religious types aren't getting it. And when I try to correct them, they aren't liking it. In fact, they are thwarting me. And, as readers of Mark, the writer of Mark signaled us way back in chapter 3, verse 6. There it says that the religious leaders that were experiencing Jesus' idea of Sabbath, they left that Sabbath day. They found some people associated with Herod, and they began a conspiracy to kill Jesus. Jesus knew the dangers. He might not have known then, but the gospel writer Mark knew, clued us in. And Jesus, across time, realized just how dysfunctional it was, how very, very terrible, and how very, very broken. It hit me that Jesus then understood his deeper mission. It was to expose abusers. Now that's a heavy word. And today I'm going to use that term as a sense of those who abuse or those who neglect their opportunities in life. Jesus exposed the dysfunction or oppression, the repressive ways that were around him. And it was in the religious establishment. Classically, when Jesus tried to address the abuse, if it was an ordinary situation, you hope that someone would self-correct, that someone would listen, have an aha, and maybe some did. But those who are serial abusers, you know what? And I study this. People who are serial abusers, when they're held accountable, they see accountability as, you're abusing me. Classic abuser statement. And that's what happened to Jesus. He was trying to hold the religious establishment accountable, and they didn't like it. Classic abusers. What they did then was to scapegoat Jesus. He's the problem. The one holding me accountable is abusive. And skillful abusers know how to scapegoat and undermine and make sure that nobody believes the ones who hold abusers accountable. It's a dynamic that is age-old, and it is frightening, and Jesus was trying to warn the disciples. Abusers can be anybody, and it can happen to anyone. Be careful, Jesus said. Be careful. I'm warning you. Heads up, okay? It's like Jesus knew the writing was on the wall because he was going to speak up. He wasn't going to hide. He was going to continue to hold these ones accountable, and it was going to get him killed. Wow. So that brings me back. What does it mean for us to take up the cross? Well, okay, step one, deny yourself. It's not about you and your ego. And in talking about ego, I always want to emphasize it doesn't mean that you're treated like a doormat or you let abusers abuse you and it just goes unchecked. No. When you deny yourself, it's not about your ego, but also pair that with Mark 1:11, that you are a beloved child of God. So I find that a foothold. If you are ever in an abusive, oppressive, or dysfunctional situation, remember that you are a beloved child of God, BCG, beloved child of God. And that's the first line, by the way, of our Cup of Life prayer that we've been praying across Lent. So, beloved child of God, you have a sense of who your identity is, and then take up your cross. I think from your identity as a beloved child of God, and hopefully that makes you realize everybody else is a beloved child of God too, you take up the cross. Oof, the cross of suffering, of being rejected, of getting killed. I wonder when we take up the cross is when we are being accountable with our lives, being accountable as beloved children of God, and being accountable to the darkness in the world. Because Jesus warned us, the world is a dangerous place. You know, I wish it could be just all healing and puppies and kittens and love and dancing. Jesus is warning us, it's dysfunctional, it's evil. Presbyterians like to use the word depravity, and I think that's a very useful word at times. So should we hide? Should we stick our heads in the sand? Should we avoid dealing with abusive or bullying people because it is just way too dangerous? Jesus says, take up your cross. Take up your cross. Jesus knows that his work on earth is not complete. It is dependent on his followers to take up the cross of accountability and speak up about what's right and what's wrong. Blessed are you who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for you shall be filled. You shall be filled. Which takes us to that last part of Jesus foretelling what's going to happen to him. Yeah, suffer, rejected, killed, and time will pass, and the Son of Man will rise. And later, when Jesus has scooped up the disciples and the crowd, he says, you know, those who want to save their life, they're going to lose it. And those who lose their life are going to save it. Which makes you wonder, what is life? What is life? Is life being poor stewards of opportunities? Is life treating others oppressively? Is life being silent when something is wrong? Is life shrinking in fear because we know if we do speak up, we could be rejected and we could be a target ourselves? What is life? Jesus says, if you are my follower, you take up the cross, you are accountable, and you will find life, because through your struggle, you will find me. Jesus goes the dark path. He lays that road down for us so we know when we are on that path of struggle, we are with him, and he is with us, and we find life, true life, meaningful life, the deep well of life that is kind of a mystery, the mystery of the Beatitudes, the mystery of bigger life than we ever imagined. Jesus said it's going to be dangerous out there. Jesus said, you know, people will talk and act like they know who I am. But who do you say that I am? Who do you say? Take up the cross of accountability. Take a risk. Be accountable to your life. If you are Jesus' follower, you are called to a much higher standard. That's what it means to have the mind of Christ. To God be the glory. Amen.